Hi, everybody. This is Horsepower Heritage. I'm Maurice Merrick. My guest this week is Bradley Price, the founder of Autodromo, an obsessively detailed maker of automotive-inspired wristwatches with which I'm sure many of you are already familiar. If you're a regular listener, you'll know I've scarcely mentioned wristwatches on the show, but I do have a few. It's a small collection, but I enjoy them. And after all, they're fun, just like cars. And most car guys seem to have an affinity for watches as well. Bradley and I went in depth about our thoughts on great design, the story of how he started Autodromo. We talked about a number of the incredibly cool watches he's produced, and we discussed his experiences collecting classic cars and vintage racing Alfa Romeos. So this is a long episode, but I promise you it's a good one. Break it off in chunks if you have to. In fact, I think this is one of my all-time favorite conversations. I really enjoyed talking to Bradley, and I think you'll like it too. Now, of course, one of the challenges with this discussion is that you can't see the watches on an audio podcast. But this episode is also being released as a full video version on the Horsepower Heritage YouTube channel. We'll also have plenty of eye candy on Instagram. And if you just want to stick with the audio version, at least go to autodromo.com while you listen, because you'll appreciate what you see there. And I'm going to spell that. It's AUTODROMO.com. Of course, there's a link in the show notes, as always. And finally, do me a favor, share this episode with a friend and help me grow the audience. I think this one is a perfect entry point for people who haven't heard the show yet. Really good stuff. And without further ado, here's Bradley Price of Autodromo. Enjoy. I have admired your work from afar, and I have to say, you have excellent taste.
Thank you. That's very kind.
Both in cars and in timepieces. I really want to get into your car fascination, the cars you have in the garage, cars you've owned and loved. And I know that you're really into vintage racing as well, not just the history, but you're actually doing it yourself now.
Yes, that's right. That was really my boyhood dream, to do vintage racing. And so in a way, having this company and doing this work has enabled me to achieve that dream. So that's actually kind of one of the sweetest parts of running the company and doing what I do, is I was actually able to finally do this thing that I always wanted to do ever since I was a little kid.
Yeah, my experience with Horsepower Heritage has been that it has opened so many doors to not just relationships, but experiences that would never maybe have otherwise been available to me.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's one thing if you own a car and you go to car events, but I talk to so many different people about things in the automotive world. And I imagine it's largely true with you and Autodromo as well. That's just kind of opened whole new worlds for you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, definitely. I did grow up around vintage cars, but I was not in the car world, so to speak, or connected in any way to like concours events and stuff like that. I mean, we would go to like local club shows or whatever that were in Illinois growing up. But this has been really cool to become part of the larger kind of car world, I guess you could say, and meet all sorts of people from around the world. And that's been pretty awesome.
Yeah, and kind of make your mark too. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think the car community that you and I are both involved in, they know Autodromo. I mean, and I don't just mean like they know the brand, but when you look at an Autodromo wristwatch, even without branding, it's got a signature style.
Yeah, it's something that I try to work on, that it should be instantly identifiable as one of our watches, and it shouldn't just look like a copy of something that existed, or even things that are mimicking things from the past have to have their own personality, their own unique character. So I try to take inspiration from the past without ever completely just regurgitating it. It has to be a new way of looking at it.
Yeah. We haven't talked about watches a whole lot on this show. I do have a small collection of watches. It's very modest.
Mhm.
I wouldn't call myself a watch enthusiast, but I do appreciate them. I enjoy wearing them. And I get sick of just digital everything. And so it's nice to have an analog item to look at for to see what time it is.
Yeah, I think so too. And you always have your phone as a backup in case you really need, I don't know, to have it down to the actual second of whatever appointment or reminders or whatever. So really you're free. What I've always said, people asked me back in 2011 when I started the company, people would say to me, why would you want to start a watch company when everybody's using their phone now? Nobody wears a watch anymore. This was kind of at the dawn of the current era. Now it seems like an obvious thing, but in 2011, it was really true that most younger professionals weren't wearing a watch at all. This is way before the Apple Watch, obviously, and the phone was novel. So the idea of having your phone to tell time was novel, and so uh, I've always felt though that the smartphone and also now the Apple Watch, it frees the watch to become a pure vessel of emotional content and not just a utilitarian tool to tell time. And I think that's actually why we tend to appeal to younger customers, like as in like under 50, let's say, because a lot of older customers, like people in their 70s, let's say, and up, they actually look at watches very utilitarian because in their day, that's what it was, a tool to tell time. It was, a nice thing to show status maybe, but it fundamentally was a tool. And I don't think they tend to get the brand as much as the younger guys do because they're really understand the idea of the watch as like this vessel for emotional content or identity or like telling people something about yourself through wearing it, expressing your passion for cars in a subtle way in the office. Those kind of things I think really matter to our customer. So I like the fact that we have these other means of telling time that are available anywhere. Really, I think it frees it.
Yeah, and the things around us, I don't want just a run of the mill thing. I want something that's a little bit special and artfully done and high quality. And like watches are one thing, but another example is, I like using a fountain pen because I
Hmm. Yeah,
ballpoints are annoying to me.
fountain pens are big again too.
Yeah,
It's a whole thing now.
it is.
And I'm not like super in that realm of I know one guy in particular who he was making watches, like he was doing it himself, like he had machinery and he was like trying to make watches, and he was also doing fountain pens, and his fountain pen business just like took off, and he kind of went away from the watches, and now he's just like he's doing really well with fountain pens.
That's
He's a young
great.
guy, it's crazy, it's cool.
Yeah, and you just never know kind of what's going to hit in the zeitgeist, right?
Hmm.
But if you follow your passion, it will find an audience. It will find acolytes.
Yes. Well, I think for people in my age group, I'm 45, so just like in a general parentheses, let's just say, growing up in the 80s and 90s was a time when most consumer products had zero emotional content and they were really kind of low quality. Unless you were buying some very high end something that was for fancy people, like you're buying a Bang& Olufsen stereo that actually had nice material quality or whatever. Most of the products that we grew up with were garbage. They were just like shitty beige plastic stuff. So I think that there is a yearning for people in their 30s and 40s to have like beautiful objects around them, because that it's really from another era prior to like when I grew up. So I always liked old things growing up as a kid. I always liked vintage stuff my whole life, and because it, like you say, it was special. These things had, whatever, a pen on a desk had a beautiful marble base, and you would stick the pen in, and there was a little gold thing there. Nothing had been turned into a cheap commodity yet. So I think there's a return to that's going on now.
Yeah, it's a backlash against disposable society.
Yes,
You
yes,
know,
I think so. And I think that even younger people, maybe in their 20s and teens, well, I don't know. I can't speak about teens, but I think there's again, like they're kind of in a more dematerialized sense again.
Yeah.
Like they've gone away from the physical object a bit compared to people who are a little bit older than them. That's my impression, at least. But
No, I agree. Hey guys, I want to take a quick break to say if you enjoy Horsepower Heritage, there are a few ways you can support the show. Go to buymeacoffee.com/HP Heritage and become a patron. There's a link in the show notes. You can make a one-time donation or you can support the show monthly. It's easy, and for the price of a latte, you can help me continue to bring you more of the people and stories behind the machines. You can also leave 5 stars and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify because that helps new listeners discover the show. Thanks for your support, and now back to the show. What would 45-year-old Bradley tell 25-year-old Bradley when he started the company?
well, so at 25, I was working in a branding agency in Manhattan called the Arnell Group, and it was a very high pressure environment. I was not very well paid, but I was learning a lot. And I actually use a lot of the things that I learned at that agency every day in my design and presentation of how the brand is presented, et cetera. So it was a great training. It was a great graduate school, if you will, for me. And yeah, I would just tell that kid to keep working, and to believe in himself, because that ultimately that's what got me where I am now. Is that I also to be patient, because I think a lot of people, I wanted to hang up my own shingle from the minute I graduated, really, but I didn't have any idea what the hell I was doing, and I didn't know anything. And I think that from the age of 23 to 25 is like where a young man is particularly arrogant and actually knows nothing. So it's the hardest people to manage. I used to have like younger employees that I would manage at one of my other old jobs, and it was like that was always the age group where it was like so hard to tell them, like, you don't know what you're talking about. But I think though that if you could like be patient enough to learn in your 20s like how the world actually works and how things are actually done, then you can really start something that's successful later on. Which isn't to say that you can't start something in your 20s, but I just feel like when I look back, I'm amazed at how little I knew and how little I actually understood.
Yeah, but you were so confidently wrong about things,
You're
right?
confidently wrong. In fact, you're angry at people that don't listen to you and don't take you seriously, without realizing why they don't take you seriously is because you don't know what you're talking about.
If you could bottle that confidence of a 25 or 30-year-old and then mix it in with the wisdom of a 45 or 50-year-old, that's really that's the sweet spot, right? That's where you want to be eventually in life.
Yeah, I think so. If you can have the same curiosity and ambition and energy level, the energy level is a big part of it.
Yes.
Certainly at 45 with 2 kids now, I do not have the energy level that I had when I started the company. I used to work till like 2, 3 in the morning doing computer models and renderings and all this stuff. After my day job was over, I would go and do another full shift of work essentially on my own stuff. That those days are over.
Yeah. So we should let people know you're an industrial designer by training, right?
Correct. Yes.
And I think if there's anything I know about industrial designers, it's that they want to do their own thing. I mean,
Yes.
working for others is okay, but eventually you want to, like you said, hang your own shingle.
Yeah. Industrial designers are a particular breed of people, I would say, that uh, they want to make things better and special and more cool and more beautiful. They're very good at seeing like what's wrong with stuff that's around them, and like why did they do it this way? Why didn't they do it that way? And there's kind of there you do have to have a certain arrogance in a way to say the way I'm thinking is better than whatever those people did, even though those people probably had a perfectly valid reason for doing whatever they did on whatever this object is. Like, why does a fire hydrant look the way it does, or whatever? So you have to have a certain amount of self-confidence to say, well, I could do a better, let's say, fire hydrant than what exists out there. But in order to actually achieve that, I think that where you get the maturity that you're talking about comes in is how do you actually convince the fire hydrant company to make your fire hydrant? And how do you get the city to buy it and install it? That otherwise, whatever cool idea you have is pointless, because if you can't do those other two things to get the buy-in from the people that actually make the decision, then you're just an artist, essentially satisfying yourself. And in a way, this work that I do is that it's withdrawn from having to, like, I make the decisions now and I justify my own decisions, and in a way, it is becoming the artist that I wanted to be, because I don't have to get stakeholders to justify my designs.
Right. And there's a tension between form and function, right? Always.
Yes, I mean, I've always subscribed to a idea that form and function have to enhance each other, and they have to be in a unison and a unity, which is Frank Lloyd Wright talked about this a lot, actually, of the idea of like form and function being one and being organic so if you're designing a concrete column, it should be in a structural shape, yet also thin and beautiful. So that's always been my guiding philosophy, is not one following the other per se. That's why I'm a big fan of Colin Chapman as well, or Ettore Bugatti, because those two engineers, they had a similar outlook on that type of thing, which is that the components should be beautiful and should be elegantly thought out so that they could do multiple things with one piece. And that's something I really admire.
And sometimes, and this maybe doesn't apply to what you do, but sometimes with consumer products, something can be beautiful, elegant, well designed, and very high functioning, but it doesn't necessarily capture the market you might think it would have. Like a good example that I can think of is videotape. So, Betamax was a superior technology,
Right.
but VHS proliferated the market,
Correct.
and that happens more often than maybe we realize.
It's true. It's actually kind of a thing that I think about now, of how much Apple and Steve Jobs and Johnny Ive affected the larger visual world of like product design and just general design culture in America over like 25 years or whatever. Uh, because again, going back to my previous thing about the cheaper, easier way was the dominant way for so long. And the idea that now, like, it's not just the iPhone that's a beautiful smartphone. It's like pretty much every competitor product is, if they're not all on the same level, okay, sure. But like, it's not like you have the Apple product, which is like amazing, and then everything else is just garbage. It's like the average level of design and material quality, et cetera, that's on the marketplace now in a variety of product categories, is just so high now compared to what it used to be. And when I was in design school, like, that was simply not the case. I mean, Apple was like so out in left field, doing things that were so much different. It was so inspiring to young designers at that time, that a big corporation, could be taking risks, and then other corporations were seeing the success and saying, "Oh, we want to do that too." That was a watershed moment, looking back, where, you know, to go back to your VHS Betamax thing, it's like that was kind of the opposite, where we actually chose the right direction as a culture to go into the better outcome, I guess you could say, that we could have had.
Yeah, Apple has been tremendously influential. And by the way, if you told me in 2005 that I would be spending $1,500 on a phone, I would have thought you were crazy. Of course,
Yeah.
it's not just a phone. It's
No, I mean,
literally
it's a supercomputer compared to what we have.
right.
It's like more than the space program in the '60s had right here in your hand.
Yep.
It's amazing.
But for me, it's also very much about Apple design. The design of the iPhone, the feel of it in your hand, the weight, the user interface, it's all. I've never used an Android, and people like Androids, and that's great. It's a subjective thing, but You mentioned Steve Jobs, you mentioned Frank Lloyd Wright. Who are some of your other, I guess, heroes or people that you admire in design?
Well, I grew up really into streamline and Art Deco stuff as a child. So we had some books around the house. So I used to read about Raymond Loewy and Henry Dreyfuss, and those were the people that I really idolized as a kid as being like you would see these before and after pictures of like, here's the way the locomotive used to look. And then Raymond Loewy built this streamlined body for it. And look at how it looked after. And you're like, wow, that's so beautiful. Look at those lines. And, it's so fast looking. And I think for me, that was my introduction to industrial design was really through people like Raymond Loewy and Henry Dreyfuss that, really founded this profession. Because before them, there was no okay, you could say Peter Behrens was the first industrial designer in Germany, but as far as America, these were the founding fathers of design as a profession. And so I still look back to them today. Actually, I think I went away from them a bit into more of a high modern direction for a while as a younger guy that, I was really into Dieter Rams and stuff, but I still have a tremendous affection and respect for that stuff, but I don't find it as exciting. I think that what makes Art Deco and streamlined stuff, as well as cars, exciting is that there's an implied motion to them. There's a minimalism, but they're not afraid to add important decorative elements that make the design come to life. And I think that with my work, it's the same thing where I try to be a minimalist, but I I'm not afraid to add some amount of decoration, which is such a dirty word to designers, but the right amount of decoration in the right places can totally transform a design into something that comes to life.
Right, and I think the trick is to pare it down to the bare essentials. Like, you can easily go too ornate,
100%.
Like, one of my favorite examples, a person I've talked about before on the show is Virgil Exner,
Hmm.
and I feel like, Virgil Exner's designs are wonderful, but I have a feeling that his design team kinda held him back more often than not.
Well, constraints are good.
Right.
Constraints are your friend. I'm a huge David Lynch fan.
Mhm.
I got, God rest his soul. But I feel like his best work was when he was fighting against the system rather than having complete unfettered creative control. And then he made these things that were so like beyond incomprehensible. To me, maybe this will be controversial to some people, but I kind of like when he's in the system and he's pushing the boundaries of the system of the studio or the TV companies to like make art, but he's still like kind of being restrained. And I know that he hated that, but I think that the results were better in a way than when he was completely left to do whatever he wants.
Yeah, I think you're right, and anytime you're talking about maybe a creative pursuit or let's just say art,
Hmm.
there's a temptation to be self-indulgent.
Yeah, yeah.
You have to have discipline in the creative pursuits. I saw an interview with Lynch, and you've probably seen the same one, where he was really complaining about the studio and how many shoot days they had and kinda all the shackles they were putting on him.
Yep.
But I think you're really onto something there. That constraint was probably he was better off that way.
That's just my opinion. Yeah, but
Yeah. No,
I I, I do think that.
I think you're onto something.
Um, there's a really great quote. Okay, a couple other references here. So there's two quotes that I really love. But one of them is a bit cheeky from Roger Talon, who was the guy, a French industrial designer who designed the TGV as well as other interesting French things.
And we should say that the TGV is the Grand Vitesse, the high-speed
Yes,
train.
this is the bullet train in France, which was one of the first high speed trains in the world, and he was the designer of it. And he said, "The artist is one who masturbates, but the designer makes love, and his partner is industry." I just
That's
love
very French.
it's very French, but it's so true because you need to cajole and you need to seduce. You can't just sit there in a room and just do something. You have to be like seductive and tell a story. And it's like I think there's a real kernel of truth in that statement, even it's a very French statement. But yeah,
Yeah.
I love that line. And it's a line you don't see. I saw it in a book about him once, and I've never seen it really generally quoted, but I thought it was like a genius line.
Yeah, I was going to say that's probably not going to be widely quoted, but
I know.
apropos of our
Yeah.
discussion.
So the other quote that I used to have this on the side of my computer at my old job was an interesting plainness is the most difficult and delicate thing to achieve. I think that's the quote, and it's from Mies van der Rohe.
Mm.
And I thought that the term an interesting plainness is a really good way to describe minimalism, because going back to what we were talking about before about decoration or not decoration, obviously Mies van der Rohe eschewed any kind of decoration, but he also, I think, to say that he was form follows function is not true whatsoever. It's just that he used structural things as his flourishes. And so, like the shape of columns or use of, like, okay, on the exterior of some of his minimalist skyscrapers, the I beams that are kind of jutting out are totally not structural. They're decorative,
Hmm.
and they're not part of the structure of the building, but they add the verticality that you see to the building. So that to me is the interesting plainness. And it's like a secretive way of introducing decoration into modernism. And I like that. I find that really cool, because otherwise it's just pure engineering. And so even Mies van der Rohe, who's considered a functionalist, it's still doing decoration on a certain level, right? So for me, that's like my favorite quote for design in general.
I like it. Wow, dude, we're 29 minutes in and we haven't talked about cars or really the watches yet. We've been
It's okay.
so far, this has kind of been a little bit of a highfalutin conversation. Like we're talking about high concept and stuff, but let's bring it back down to
I
earth a
like
little.
I like an American V8. I'll just say
Okay, good.
that.
Let's bring it back down to earth a little bit and go back to you're sitting in your office in New York and you want to do your own thing. What finally made you pursue your own brand? And by the way, the name Autodromo is awesome. It definitely it says cars, it says time. Dromos in Greek, I think, is running. That's the root of it.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
So how did you get here from there?
Well, I remember it very clearly. The moment it clicked in my head was I was sick of my job. I didn't want to work in this studio anymore that I was in. And I was like, I should really get my portfolio together and start interviewing. I got to get out of here. And
Mm.
then I was, I know people. At the time, I knew people who worked in all the design studios in New York City at that time. There weren't that many. And there wasn't like a single place where it was like, oh, this is where you really need to work if you want to be happy. It's like everyone was kind of, industrial designers are also miserable people. I'm going to be honest with you. I find, and if anyone is listening to this who's an industrial designer, you're probably like, yeah, it's true. They're kind of miserable people because it's like a frustration. There's like a frustration level that you have. And I just realized that, within 6 months, I was going to be unhappy again wherever this new job was going to land me. And plus, because I wouldn't have the seniority I had, I was going to have to work even harder to make a name for myself in that office and like get the respect and get the projects and so on and do the work. So I was like, okay, so I'm going to go through all this effort, interview, hopefully get a job, maybe get paid more money, but then I'm going to have to work harder and I'll just be miserable in 6 months to a year. And I just said, okay, let's think about an escape plan. Like what could I do? And actually the watches was not the first thing I thought of. There was all sorts of business ideas I had. I had some idea for a food truck that was going to be in Union Square. I had all sorts of weird ideas like I went through. So it wasn't like I just suddenly was like, a watch company. No, it was very long process before I had the idea for starting a watch company.
All right, I got to stop you right there because you said food truck, and I know you weren't thinking about just some GM step van. Like it had to be a certain truck.
Well, the truck itself wasn't the critical part. It
Oh, it
was the
wasn't. Okay.
no, 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 it wasn't. I had seen this machine that makes these Korean walnut cakes called Hodokwaja.
Okay.
And I just thought this machine was fascinating to watch it operate because it has these little molds that flip over. I don't know if anyone has ever seen these. It's not like they're that common. And I just thought, oh wow, if I could like get this machine, I'd seen it in like a mall kind of thing, and they had this machine making these walnut cakes, and I would just go sit, and it had like a glass window to watch it work. And it was very cool contraption. I just thought if I were to get one of these machines and put it on a truck and have it in Union Square with the window, they're delicious and it's like a cheap bag full of warm cakes, and like people would come just to watch it work, because it's really cool and kids would love it. And anyway, this was my initial thought. And then I was like, I don't want to have a food truck.
Right.
I don't want to get up and make batter at like 4 a.m. to like sell walnut cakes or whatever. And then I'm not Korean. And I'm like, all these things that come up and I'm like, I can't, this is not the right thing for me to do. Even though I think someone could make money doing it, it wasn't for me. So that was like one of the ideas that I actually started researching, and I went down a certain amount. And then I was like, I got to do something that's design related. I can't go into the food business. I'm not a foodie kind of guy anyway. I've never told that story publicly, but friends of mine know about the walnut cakes.
This sounds like a Seinfeld episode. This is something Kramer would do.
Yeah. Walnut cakes, Jerry. They're delicious.
All right. So it was not just about a change of scenery. It was just about a total change of mindset and pursuit.
Yeah, yeah. Ultimately, I had a car blog at the time. It was called Automobiliac. So I had this like network of friends that I had met through blogging about cars, but I think that there was this desire to get closer to my passion for cars again because I'd kind of moved away from that when I moved to New York City, and for a number of years I wasn't really that focused on cars anymore. I was
Well,
focused on
plus New York is not a car-friendly environment anyway.
not at all. And it's a little bit now, but back in the early 2000s, it was absolutely not a thing whatsoever. There was zero car culture in New York City. Anyway, I just felt like this, like when I started to think about this watch idea, it started to click that like, oh, this could be a really great way to incorporate my passion for cars into my work, into my business. And so that was a big aha moment when I started to think, oh, this could be really cool because I could make something car related that I love to do. And it started to gel, the idea that I should do something car related that was a wearable product.
And you were a watch guy already too?
Not really. It's actually funny because I was collecting digital watches. As an industrial designer, I always wanted things to be futuristic and the next thing, like the future. So I actually have somewhere a whole box full of these really weird futuristic digital watches I used to wear. I would either buy them in design stores or I'd order them from Japan. Uh, and they were all like non-traditional ways of showing the time. And that was actually what I would wear. I was wearing these like rubber bracelet kind of digital watches. I did not have a collection of traditional analog watches. My dad did have a Breitling that was a gift from his parents when he was like graduated from college or something like that back in the 60s. That was the only kind of classic watch in our family, which mainly sat in a box. So I had to learn about watches. That was really, I came at this with a huge knowledge of cars and design, but not about watches. So I had to learn about that. But honestly, as an industrial designer, you're used to that. Everything you design, you have to learn about it. How could you design surgical equipment? You're not a doctor, right? But you learn about, okay, this is the procedure. This is how the doctor holds this thing that makes this incision, and you're going to help make this handle so he can manipulate it better, for example. So you always have to learn about very technical, specific things all the time.
Yeah.
And so learning about watches was no different for me. And of course, again, I love vintage stuff. I love old objects. So that was great to get into, to really dig into.
When you said digital watches, I'm thinking it made me think about how Casio for a while killed the analog watch. Everybody wanted a Casio.
Yeah, yeah. When I was a kid, that was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah. And you've done some digitals at Autodromo, haven't you?
I did a digital watch called the Group C, which we've now sold out of. This one is a robin's egg blue Cerakote finish, but the idea with this one was to be kind of like a kid's dream watch from the 80s. That it's like it wasn't made in the 80s, but I wanted it to initially resemble one of these Casio watches, and you'd be like, "Oh, that's I've seen that before. That's a Casio. Who cares?" And then you're like, "Oh, wait a minute, but this is really heavy. This is stainless steel. Oh, this is a sapphire crystal." Like, and so I wanted to have like a super high quality perception that you was sort of unexpectedly really nice. So that was a bit of a art project in a way, which certain people really got it and loved it, and other people were just like, "How could you be charging this much money for a Casio?" Essentially, and they didn't get it at all. So it was a very love it or hate it product. But the people that really liked it, some of them bought multiples, and they totally got the idea.
I get it because those digital watches from the 80s were, I mean, by definition, they were cheap and disposable, and you didn't care if it got chewed up.
Yeah,
But
they had plastic crystals. They were very light. The straps are just rip.
yeah,
And I just thought it would be cool to make like something that was like it's to go to another designer. I don't know if you know Jasper Morrison and Naoto Fukasawa. They created this term called supernormal, and the supernormal design was idea of creating familiar looking objects, but they were like incredibly sophisticated in their execution in terms of their proportions, their material quality, the details. But at the first glance, they looked like a chair or whatever you'd seen a million times. And that was the idea of the supernormal. And they did a whole series of objects. There were these supernormal objects, which people can look up. But I kind of wanted to make this supernormal Casio concept, essentially. That was my idea behind this.
yeah, it's a surprise. You
Yeah.
see, on first blush, it's just an ordinary kind of cheap digital watch. Like you said, maybe you think it's from the 80s. And then when you hold it, when you examine it closely, you realize that this is actually high quality and it's made to
Yeah.
last. And yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like it.
And it has a sophistication that the original ones didn't have, like, in terms of like the material finishing and like just the detail level is different.
All right, so you're at this crossroads. You wanted to do something automotive related that is wearable. And when did you finally go, oh, duh, a wristwatch?
Well, I was driving. I had an Alpha GTV6. That was my car. I had done some design work on the side, and I saved up like $5,000 to buy a car. And I was like hemming and hawing about what car to get. And I finally I found a GTV6 for $4,500, and I bought that. And that was a really big game changer for me because now I could actually go out of the city. I could actually drive on back roads, and it was really liberating after being just like an apartment dweller, subway dweller for number of years. And the car was like a little bit, it had no rust, but it was a little, it was a little tatty.
Yeah.
Um, so I was driving this GTV6 through Harriman State Park at the time, and I was looking at the gauges and I was looking at the typography on the gauge, and I just thought, that would be a really handsome watch. Like just this gauge as a watch would be really cool. And then I thought, well, I don't want to literally copy this gauge, but like that's a cool idea. I should do that. Like there's these Bell and Ross watches that are like avionics watches. I was like, nobody's doing that for cars. Like, why shouldn't I do that? Like, that's a cool idea. And that just kind of happened, and all these thoughts like in succession really quickly while I was just sitting there driving. And so then I went back and I researched, like, does this exist? And it didn't really exist. Like some people have made gauge inspired watches before, but never really at a high level or really well executed as far as automotive. And so I just thought, whoa, this is really an opportunity to make something cool that I could design. And so from there, it was about a 2-year process of setting up the company and finding the right factory and designing the actual products and getting them to market, et cetera. So, but that was the epiphany moment, was driving.
I love automotive instruments, and their function should always be paramount, right?
Yes,
You want to be able to glance at an instrument and know what it's doing. I always think of a gauge before I think of a wristwatch when I see an Autodromo.
that's
I don't
good.
Yeah,
That's the idea. I mean, it's supposed to look like a gauge, but again, there's other companies now that have come along since that some of them make gauge inspired watches, but they're always quite literal. And then they
right.
even put in little things like the indicator for the brights or something. And it's like, why would you put that on a watch? It has nothing to do with a watch. So I always try to make it like it should still be a watch and it should still function as a watch. And it's not just a matter of literally copying a gauge onto a watch face, because anyone could do that. The idea is to take what makes the gauge beautiful and cool and translate that into a watch form, and also subtract away extraneous detail till you get to the essence of what makes that watch or that gauge beautiful in the first place. So, like, I'll give you an example: the Stradale watch, which we came out with in 2014, which is based on the 250 series Ferrari gauges for
Mhm.
geeks out there. You probably already figured that out. Um, that that ring, that plastic ring that you see in those gauges, is just the coolest part of the watch, of the gauge, I should say. And so the challenge with this was, how do you miniaturize that effect? And so we actually made a glass ring that is floating over the dial. It's a separate component. It has a different reflective quality from the dial, as you can see.
Mhm.
And to miniaturize that gauge, that was the core thing to get right. Everything else apart from that is secondary. But getting that ring to float over the dial and to have that reflective surface that sets it away from the dial, if you nail that, then that's like 90% of the work right there. You know what I mean? So that was the core idea, is get that across. And then everything else is just like, okay, what's the minimum amount of graphic elements I can add to make that functional as a watch and readable?
Right. Yeah, it's beautiful, and it's got depth.
Yeah, the depth was important. It made it a little thick, unfortunately, as a case. But the depth was important to me to get that.
I love that. You mentioned some other watches that are inspired, let's say, by automotive stuff or gauges, but they're always so many of them are too on the nose and gimmicky, and
Yeah.
I don't get that feeling from your watches at all, and the depth of thought that goes into your stuff is obvious.
Well, thank you.
I think the Group B is a great example. Tell us about the creation of that one because it's one
Sure.
of my favorites.
I'm wearing one right now, and this I'm wearing it on a rubber strap, which is not what it comes with. But we're actually going to come out with a rubber strap version of that, like at the end of the year, hopefully. So
Cool.
stay tuned for that. But the Group B, actually, it's interesting because it's as I got more and more into like horology and history of watches, it has a combination of automotive references, but also watch references. And so this watch, I designed it in 2014, and at that time it was still not common. You know, now we have a zillion of these kind of Gerald Genta inspired sport watches that are out now, but that was still like kind of a obscure reference, let's say, at the time. But I had this idea of like, well, what would it have been if like Gerald Genta had made like a really extreme sport watch in the early 80s that used his design language of this kind of angled lug and the shimmery, crisp case design that you would see on like Rolex Oyster Quartz or the AP Royal Oak or any of these other he did a lot of different watches that had this formula to them. He's kind of like the Giugiaro of watch design. You know, he had many clients, but he did his style for all these different clients. So you
Right.
can identify his work specifically, even though it's a Lotus or a VW or whatever. You like, that's Giugiaro, right? That's Ital design. Genta is exactly the same to me in terms of watches. So I was like, well, what would the Genta version of this like super technical watch have been? And that was the jumping off point, the inquiry that the Group B came out of. And then from there, I was like, okay, well, the dial has to be Group B inspired. Like that was the most extreme cars of the 80s were these Group B rally cars. So I looked at the gauges that are on the Lancia 037, and then I kind of made my own abstract version of that. It actually doesn't look at all like the Lancia 037 gauge if you put them next to each other. But that was the jumping off point, is a high contrast, the easily readable, minimalist. I mean, there's no numbers, so
Right.
that's been subtracted away. The only numbers are very small around the edge, and then the dial is three dimensional, so it has this little bump up
Step
in
up.
the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to add a little bit of dimension. And also the indexes are all three dimensional, so they come up a bit. So there's actually a lot of like beautiful little things happening on this watch that at first it's a very, very graphic, high contrast thing. So anyway, those were the two elements that were coming together, was like, okay, this Genta inspired exercise with the case, and then this Group B flavor from the dial. And then also I was trying to say, well, the what is the most like critical thing about Group B in general? Is the material, aerospace materials coming into racing for the very first time, really in a serious way. Like the Group B cars had all sorts of exotic metals. They had early composites. They were really the most advanced cars in the world at the time. And so I was like, oh, I want to bring titanium into this, and I want to make it really lightweight. And so this will speak to the thematic story of Group B as well. So it's not just a design thing, it's the theme of lightness. And we actually did even a lighter version later on called the Evoluzione, which had aerospace aluminum chassis. So these are all the elements that come together into the Group B.
I love it. And also you've hidden the spindle under a black disc, right? So
Yeah, and that's a turbo era thing. If you look at gauges from the turbo era, they had this black disc in the center, which I just think looks really 80s and really cool. And actually, that's the part of watches I hate. I hate I hate seeing the pinion. Many of my watches, the pinion is concealed under a disc of some description,
right.
because I find it to be like the messiest part of any watch. And I don't know why, it just bugs me.
See, I told you I wasn't really that deep of a watch guy because I said spindle and you say pinion. So, all
Yeah,
right,
there's probably some other like Swiss term that I don't even know, and like
probably.
wrong. It's not a pinion. It's but anyway, I don't know. And it's the cannon pinion is the piece of the movement that comes up that all the hands are onto this thing that's called the pinion.
Yeah, we could call it an axle too if we wanted, I guess.
You call it an axle, yeah.
But it's cool because by hiding the pinion under that disc, it looks like the hands are floating.
Correct. Yeah.
I like it. And also the Group B, another great reference that you made was that the watch was limited to 200 pieces, right? Just like
That was the Evoluzione.
okay,
Right.
there you go.
That was 200 pieces. Yeah.
And that's a reference to the number of cars they had to build to homologate.
Correct. Yes.
So, yeah.
That was a more extreme version of the watch, and it came with the 4 team color straps that was like part of the box set. And yeah, that was a neat watch. I really loved that one. That was a real I wouldn't say it was a love-hate, but I think that the typical Group B, this style, it's more like generally acceptable. That watch was weirder. It was a bit more like odd, the shape of it. But it was cool. Oh, wait, here. This is the case. I had put another dial into it, but this is the case for the Evoluzione. It had a barrel shape and then the fixed lug.
Yeah.
This is all aluminum.
What's the diameter of that watch?
I think with the aluminum version, it was like 42, but normally it's 38.
Okay. It looks bigger than
It
that.
is bigger because there's more material on these corners.
Sure.
It's the normal one, it's sucked in,
I see it. Yeah.
even though the lug width is the same.
Yeah.
But again, I was like, "Well, it's aluminum. I want it to be chunkier. I want it to look like a piece of equipment, like it's like a component."
By the way, I have to say for audio listeners, I know this is frustrating because we're talking about, I mean, this is all very visual, but if you go to my Instagram, you will see photographs of the watches that we're talking about. Bradley, I'll tag you in that post.
Sure.
And
And I can also mention, on our website, there's like an archive part of the site where all of the previous models of watch are visible, and you can go back through the whole history of the brand, and you can also see all the photo campaigns that we did for all those different watches, which have really cool cars in them. Because it's always been important to me to get really cool cars in all of our campaigns. So we actually got to launch a Delta S4 in that campaign for the Evoluzione. So that was a great car to use.
yeah, and I will post a link to your website, which is autodromo.com. And people, while they're listening, can scroll and check out what we're talking about. And unless you're behind the wheel, don't scroll while you're listening behind the wheel. Let's not do that. All right, this is a big question, Bradley, and
Mhm.
you could probably go a half hour on this question alone, but um, I know you won't. But see if maybe you can compress it for us. But
Okay.
how do you start designing a watch? I mean, do you start
Mm.
with sketches? You have to think about the movement. You have to think about the materials, the manufacturing process.
Yeah.
It's a big task.
Yeah. Very good question. So the first thing I think about is what is the time period and sort of reference material that I want to start as a jumping off point. So I think I gave a pretty good description with the Group B of how that these various elements from this time period kind of trickle and coalesce into something. So that's always the starting point. Is although I'm not trying to make a copy of something from the time, I always like the idea that this thing could have, in theory, existed at that time. So it feels somehow of that time. So if you're going to make a watch called the Group B, it should feel like it's from the 80s, right? It shouldn't feel like something that just came out. So that's part of it, is just like, what is the reference material? Like, what specific gauges do I like from this time period? What cars would they have been in, and what materials were used on those cars, and what shapes, like what form language did those cars have? Were they really torpedo shaped, or were they boxy? All those things come into play. Then I do start sketching on paper. I'm not like a great sketcher, honestly. It's never been my uh, there's certain industrial designers where sketching is like a big thing for them, where they're like really like, I'm a, they sketch a lot. They're showing everyone the sketches. It's like that. I've never been like that guy. I can do a workman-like job expressing myself visually, but I'm not like a car design sketch type of dude. I wish I had that skill, but I don't. But no, I'll do sketches. They're really more mental notes for myself. Then I will get into CAD and start to begin to design the 3D. Like at this point, it's important to start thinking about what the movement will be, because the movement defines the thickness of the case, the diameter, and also where the different elements on the dial can go. So if there's a date window, where does that date window have to be? Because you can't move it. It has to be where it is. Like, for example, on the Inter Europa, I'll show you this sub dial at 6 o'clock. That's a fixed thing. You cannot move that. So every other visual element in this watch has to work around that element. So how big is this eye going to be? It could be small. It could be gigantic. Like, you have to figure out the proportions and how it all hangs together. So those are things that you get into later, but you have to kind of know that that's going to be there. Those are like your obstacle course, so to speak. So I'm in the CAD, I'm doing the 3D CAD, and then I'll separately working on dial art. Once I have an idea, okay, the bezel is going to be this diameter. So now I have like some general size for the dial. I could start working on the dial art in parallel of like, okay, the dial is going to be this diameter. There's going to be a thing at 6 o'clock there. Now I can start designing the dial. Those two things actually happen in parallel. And then only kind of later in the process do they then interweave. That's how I work. And maybe other people don't, but I kind of work 2D and 3D separately, actually.
Right.
And then I kind of go back and forth. So once I get the 3D where I really like it, I'll output a 1-to-1 scale line drawing that I then import into the dial file. And then I can see now, okay, this is how the dial looks in the case. And I can now change elements of the dial to uh, improve the proportions.
Right. How did you decide on movement? And I mean, by that, I mean not the specific movement, but I mean, you could go mechanical, you could go quartz, and then
Hmm.
there's all sorts of options in terms of quality and
Sure.
reliability and accessibility.
Yeah, I mean, I try to keep things accessibly priced. Generally, most of our watches have been under $1,000. We've done a couple that are more expensive, but generally speaking, we're under $1,000 or thereabouts. And at that price point, we can produce something really high quality because then we don't have to value engineer anything out. Like, I hate having to, if we were trying to sell stuff at like $250, we would have to value engineer so many cool things out that would just be too expensive.
Yeah.
So for me, it's always like, what's the best possible way to make this watch? And then if it's really too expensive, we can remove a couple things. But I try to like, the price is really driven by what I put into the watch rather than starting from a price point and designing something to the price point. That's for the people wondering why the Group C was so expensive for a digital watch. These sapphire crystals, we had to ship them to Switzerland to have them printed by a specialty printing company that does stuff for like Patek and for Breitling and stuff, and then shipped back to Hong Kong to be put on the watches because we went to 7 different factories in China that couldn't get the color the way I wanted. And then finally I was like, okay, I have to bring out the big guns and like go to this fancy factory to get what I want. And that just destroyed the whole cost basis for the watch. I mean, but I wasn't going to just make the watch mediocre. You know, the watch, it had to have the colors vibrant. It had to have the level of printing quality that I wanted. So in the end, it became an expensive watch. It was not supposed to start out that way, but hey, that's just, that's just life.
Yeah. What was your first watch?
So the first watch, I did a single case design and I had a number of different dials that had different names. So the first collection, I call them like every watch has a serial number like BP01 or BP002, which is like Bradley Price. It's like I kind of was inspired by the Williams F1, the FW, the Frank Williams,
Right.
car or whatever. So, so that the BP001 and 02. So the BP001 series was the Veloce, the Vallelunga, and the Brescia. And those were the first models. And it was a very minimal, but the big dial, but no lugs and just a very, very minimal execution. And so that was the start. And I was kind of more informed by like watches you might see in a design store at that time. So like it was very clean. It was very, the no lugs thing. And as I've gone on and learned more about watches, become more. The cases have become more complex and more nuanced and a bit more orological, I guess you could say.
Right. You said that price point was important and most of the watches have been under 1,000. I have to say that they are trading well above that on the secondary market now.
Yes, it makes me happy to see that because people don't just like buy them and dump them immediately. People really tend to hang on to these watches. They really love the watches. I get that feedback a lot from customers. And even when they sell them, sometimes they're like, I really regret. Do you have this watch? I sold it. I should never have sold it. I can't get it. Do you have one? And they're really bummed out. And I'm like, I'm really sorry, but no, we don't have it. Uh, but that makes me happy that there's a passion for the brand, and also we don't make like vast quantities of stuff, so it's nice to see the secondary market is somewhat buoyant for these watches.
Yeah. What's been your biggest production run so far?
Well, with the Group B is the watch we've made the most of overall.
Many
Although
different
we've done
versions.
many different versions, different colors, etc. But that architecture, this is the I think it's the BP008. Let me see. I lift up my glasses because I'm old. BP05. There you go.
Okay.
That was our fifth design. The Group B series overall is the most numerous watch, but there's a lot of variants and references. So I think the Corsica Blue we made quite a lot of. That was a huge seller.
Are we talking like 2,000, 5,000?
No, definitely under 5,000.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're not. I mean, they're talking like in the hundreds per color. In the low hundreds, like between 100 and 500, let's say.
That's what I figured.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is good.
I mean, we've made a few thousand Group Bs over the years, but
Right.
among those, the colorways are somewhat limited.
I love the teal face or turquoise
Yeah.
face with
Yeah, that's the Corsica Blue. That's
Yeah.
that's the one here.
Yeah.
This is a very popular one. We're not going to make it again, and people love it. But it's like you can't do too much of a good thing. You got to like.
I got to get my hands on one of those.
Yeah,
That's a good one. I love it.
they're around. I mean, at least they're not like really common, but they're also not they're not the rarest color. So they exist.
What's been your most popular design? Is it the Group B and all of its variations? Yeah.
Group B is definitely the most popular design. We also get a lot of requests. The original Monoposto, which we've now reissued, that is for people who are interested, available on the website currently. That's like the current right now. Just to say a public service announcement to any fans of the brand that are listening. There's not very much stuff on the site right now. It's kind of a quiet time. We took a breather last year because of the tariffs to figure out what the heck we're doing. And now this year in 2026, I'm really moving forward full steam to replace all new stuff on the product front. So you're going to see lots of new stuff that you haven't seen this year. But right now we have the Monoposto is what we have available as the watch that we're currently selling until the next product comes out. And so the original Monoposto, which I'm holding up here, is from 2012. And this was based on the oversized gauges from like the Lancia D50 and other 50s Grand Prix cars. And this bowl-shaped case was really quite a beautiful. This was probably the first. This is actually my second case design, so it's a lot more sophisticated than the original first watch I did.
It looks very comfortable despite the size.
Super comfortable. It's 43 millimeters, but with the wire lugs, it wears smaller, and the original ones are like. Speak to your point earlier. These are very collectible now. They're worth a lot of money now, like thousands of dollars, whereas they originally were $875. But you can buy for $895. You can buy the new ones, which are in a teal, the azzurro dial, and then we also have moss green, which is this beautiful metallic green gray color.
The moss green one kind of made me think of like an Aston Martin racing green.
Yeah, that was inspired by the DBR1 that won the Nürburgring 1,000-kilometer race in 1959 with Moss. So that's what we called it, moss green. And I actually used several different Aston Martin colors before I got to the one I liked. There's a million different Aston Martin greens, so I had to kind of do a little bit of thinking about what was the color that. It's not an exact match to the race car. Again, it's what looks right on the watch at that scale that gives you the feeling of that car. Where if you actually match the color, it may look totally terrible on a watch. So again, there's always artistic license that I take with stuff.
Yeah. By the way, 59 was also the year that Carroll Shelby and Roy Salvadori won Le Mans in the DBR.
The DBR one, that's right. And that car was a different shade of green.
Right.
So but it's one of my favorite cars. Have you ever gone to the Simeone Museum?
I haven't yet, and I really want to go there.
It's the best car in the whole museum. It's absolutely drop dead spectacular in person. It's one of the most beautiful race cars ever designed, in my opinion. And it's I just feel like people don't really talk about the DBR1 that often, uh, compared to, let's say, the 250 Testarossa or the D-Type Jaguar.
Mm.
Man, what a spectacular looking car.
I think you're right. It's kind of been overshadowed for some reason, but an amazing design. Well, this is a good transition to talking about some of your cars.
Sure.
And I saw your Abarth in New York last summer,
Yeah, I showed it at the bridge. That's right.
and that thing is lovely. It's largely original, right? And
Yeah.
it's got a great competition history.
Yeah, it's the most special car in my collection, because it was in a museum for a number of years. So a lot of those cars were kind of raced until they were just completely used up.
By the way, tell people exactly what car we're talking
Yeah,
about.
sure. I'll start from the start.
Okay.
So this car, it's a 1963 Abarth Simca 1300 GT Corsa, which is a mouthful. And this was a second series of the Abarth Simca 1300, uh, which they made until basically Simca was sold to Chrysler Corporation. And I haven't ever had a definitive. I've done a lot of research about Abarth and try to understand more about the company and the man, etc. I haven't had a definitive explanation of why they even made these cars, of like why was a Simca, because anyone who knows Abarth, you hear Fiat Abarth all the time, right? Everything's
Right.
Fiat. Everything he did was Fiat based, but these cars are with Simca branded. And actually, they don't have a Simca engine. They have an engine that Abarth made himself with their own foundry castings. That's not shared with any other car. It's only for this car that this engine was made. So it's like, you don't want to blow it up
No.
because the block is not obtainable. It's not a Simca block or anything. So it's really just the floor pan of the of the Simca 1000, which was a kind of a pedestrian sedan. The floor pan of that car was used almost like raw material. It's like an IKEA hack. It's like making a full custom kitchen with like some piece of crap from IKEA. It's like they took the floor pan and they cut it and they welded trusses, and then they put this handmade aluminum body on, and then their own engine. So by the end of it, it's like basically it's a bespoke race car with this Simca floor pan. But that's the only Simca. Well, the transmission is a Simca transmission mated to the Abarth engine, and then the front suspension is derived from the Simca, but it's a pretty far step away from the production car. And I've never understood exactly what the inside baseball was on why they did this co-branding, but my theory is that Fiat owned Simca, and I think they wanted to have a competition uh, credibility so that they could sell the company to another company, and this was part of prepping Simca to be sold, was
Interesting.
to like build up the competition side of it. Because as soon as they did that, they sold it, and then this program was killed.
Yeah.
And then Chrysler took over, and they didn't do any more competition after that.
And it's rear engine, right?
It's rear engine. The engine is behind the rear axle, like a Porsche or an Alpine. And it's actually the handling is extremely stable, unlike what you would think. You cannot easily spin this car. I've tried on the track to provoke it to slide, and it is almost an understeering car, really.
Wow. Unexpected.
Very unexpected. The first time I drove it, I'm at Lime Rock and I'm going around Big Bend, and I'm like, okay, let me just goose it a little, see if I can get it to dance a little. And it just like kept going. I was like, wow, this is like not what I expected at all. I thought I was going to be on tenterhooks the whole time. Like, oh my God. No, it's, if anything though, when you turn into the corner, you have to like yank the wheel to get the car to take a set, because the suspension is a transverse leaf spring in the front. So the car has to be sort of flopped over to then get the turning to actually start to happen. You have to get rid of all the slop, because it's a very softly sprung car.
Mm.
So you have to kind of get the car to like lean over first, and then it can turn in.
Do you sense any front end lifting or understeer at speed in that car?
I didn't feel like it was lifting in the front. I would imagine it would, though, if you were really at high speed, because this car with the right gearing on like a test track, I think it was capable of 160 miles an hour, which
Wow.
is insane. Like Bernard Caillet tested these cars when they were new, like on a track, and I think that they were on like a sort of a oval setup, kind of Monza banking type of thing. They could go that fast, which is remarkable. But I never got, anywhere close to that
Yeah.
because I was taking it easy, and the car is not really geared for that.
Yeah, and you don't wanna like you said, you don't wanna blow it up.
I also don't want to die.
Yeah,
So there's also that. So
good point.
anyway, it does handle a bit strange, but it's not tail happy, which is kind of a funny thing that you would expect.
Is it, twin cam?
It's a twin cam engine.
Yeah.
They later on had a twin spark head for these cars, but mine has a single spark plug per cylinder. And then they eventually made a 2-liter version of the engine, which is like really insane. And that is a very fast car.
Yeah. I imagine it revs freely and
It does. In fact, it doesn't have any power below like 5,000.
right.
It's literally dead at 4,500 RPM. It's not even on cam, and it's like nothing's happening. And then from 6 to 7, it's like it's almost like a turbo kicks in. And then it could, in theory, go to like 8,500, but I've never, because of the age of the engine and so on, I've never really felt comfortable to take it up to 8,500 because it's just too risky. So I have a red line at 7 or 7,200 to shift. But you get between 6 and 7, you really get that hot cam action going on.
Right. And if I'm remembering correctly, that's a Targa Florio alum,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. This car, this particular chassis number 80, ran 3 times in the Targa Florio. It ran in 63 and then in 68 and 69. And it finished in 68 and 69, but in 63, it was a DNF.
You still have the scrutineering decals in the windscreen, right?
Yes, so it has the 69 Targa Florio scrutineering sticker still on the glass, which I've kind of covered over with a protective plastic, but it's still there. And also under the steering column, there's all these little, I'm trying to remember the Italian word for it, but they're these little lead seals that the
Mm.
scrutineers would affix. They'd put a little string around the steering column, then they would press this little lead weight that had a tag on it to say the car had been inspected. And it has about 20 of these hanging down under the dashboard. And when I saw that, the first time I saw this car, that detail for me was like, God, just forget it. I was like, this is amazing. The fact that it's still there after 50 years is just incredible.
You're also never gonna see another one. I mean, when you bring that to an event, you're on your own.
Well, the funny thing is, so a friend of mine who's also really into these cars, he has one. So when we met, there was a second car there, but that's probably the only time in North America you would ever see 2 of these cars in the same place at the same time because there's so few of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that car has a different history. That car actually raced against my car in '64. We have some records that we researched. So they actually shared the racetrack together, and now they're both here in New York, which is kind of incredible.
It is. It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Another one of your cars that I love is the Dino 208 GT4.
Yeah, that was the first car that I ever bought after the GTV6 was the first one, but the first kind of collector car, if you want, that I ever bought was this Dino. And I bought it shortly after the company started to take off a bit, and it was on Craigslist. And I thought it was a scam. Maybe I remember my friends emailing. We were emailing the listing to each other, like, "Is this real? Like, this guy's really selling this on Craigslist, and the price was really good." And I was like, "I'm just going to email the guy. Like, what's the worst that could happen, right? I'm going to be careful, but we'll see." And it was a real guy in New Jersey, and really nice guy. I got the car pretty reasonable. It needed a lot of TLC, had a lot of deferred maintenance, but I've gradually gone through the whole car, and now it's really reliable. And I've driven it to the tail of the dragon and back, and I've had a lot of adventures in that car.
And it's a 2-liter V8.
That's right. So the Italian government in the 70s had essentially a luxury tax, which was slightly luxury / fuel economy, but they wanted to encourage people to buy cars with smaller engines. So there was a tax on cars over 2 liters. And Ferrari at the time still needed the Italian market pretty badly to sell cars, not like today where it's so international and you have people in Dubai and whatever buying Ferrari. So it was really like Italy was still an important market. And they decided to make this 2-liter version of the car to get under this tax limit. So they took the 3-liter V8 from the 308 GT4 and debored it down to 2 liters. And then they also changed the cam timing and the transmission gear ratios. So it's not exactly like they just ruined it. They actually changed the performance figures. It is less horsepower, but it sounds great.
Yeah. And it's black, and it's a Gandini design.
It's black, and it is a Gandini design. Yes, it's the only Gandini designed production Ferrari. Also the only Bertone designed production Ferrari in a larger sense. And it's pretty cool because he was designing other cars similar to it at the same time. And if you really look at the Stratos in particular, it's almost the exact same design. It's just like a bigger, longer roof. And it's kind of, someone was saying it's like if the Stratos had a more responsible brother that worked in finance. That's what it would look like. So, because it's a 4-seater, etc. But all of the basic lines, the architecture of the shapes, exactly the same as the Stratos. You could just move the lines up and down without any curvature change and almost make it into the Stratos.
I love wedge cars.
The wheel arch goes up a little, the angle tilts down a little, the roof gets slightly longer. It's essentially like the same recipe.
Yeah. I love wedge cars.
Yeah, me too. I still want to make a wedge car watch one day, but I haven't been able to crack what it would be.
Yeah.
It's on my mental list though, to do a wedge car watch.
What else is in the garage? I know you have an earlier Alpha, right? I think you have a 750 series car.
Yes, I have a Giulietta Spider Veloce, which is my primary race car. And I've had that since 2014, and I've done a lot of vintage racing, mainly at Lime Rock with it. And that was the car that allowed me to achieve my dream of racing. Because as a kid, that was like what I wanted to do. That if I had had the talent and resources, I would have wanted to be a professional racing driver. That was definitely my boyhood fantasy. But you have to really have parents that want to encourage that, first of all, which my parents were like, absolutely not. We used to go to Road America and watch the vintage races once a year. And that was always like the highlight of my year, was to go see the vintage racing at Road America. And so I just said, when I get older, I want to do this. And I don't know how I'm going to do it, but this is my dream. So I bought that Giulietta Spider, and that was a great way to get into it at a reasonable cost level. And it's been a really reliable car.
They're great. They're so much fun.
It's really reliable. I don't know about yours, but I mean, knock on wood, it's never let me down, that car.
I haven't had mine that long, and I have had a little bit of work done recently. I had a brake master cylinder seal that started to go. And the symptom was sitting at a stoplight with your foot on the brake pedal. The pedal would start to sink to the floor, right?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, but that was just repaired. And other than that, no problems. The car's reliable, and it has a little bit of a tendency to be stubborn starting after you've shut it off.
When it's hot, yeah.
Right. And I guess that's because sometimes the fuel tends to leak down a little bit, so it's pretty rich when you first start it after having run it. But
I've had that occasionally happen in the track circumstances, but never on the road. But there was a time where I was racing the car at the Pittsburgh Vintage Grand Prix, which was really anybody listening to this, if you ever, it's so worth the trip to see that or to do it. If you're a vintage racer, to like go and do that event, it's so cool. It's the closest thing you can do to time traveling. It's literally like hay bales at the side of the road. I mean, it's really a throwback to drive on a road course in the center of the city. It's really cool. It's very much like the SCCA was in the 50s. So I was racing the car there. It was a really hot day. And I got kind of cocky because I qualified really well in the all alpha race. I was second on the grid, and there were like GTVs and like Duetto spiders in my grid. So I was like, hot stuff here. so so I was like, I'm going to try to like podium in this race somehow, because it is hard to pass there, as it's very narrow. So I get passed by a Duetto like right at the beginning because I don't have any power. And I'm trying to sort of hang with the front pack, which I'm completely outclassed by them because they're cars with 2-liter engines. But I'm trying desperately to cling to them. So I was doing things I shouldn't have been doing. And I spun into a hay bale. Thankfully, it didn't hurt the car. But then I could not restart the car. It was
Oh,
just cranking and cranking, cranking. And I think the car, it was just so hot. It was July, and yeah, it would not start. So I ended up having to be towed off, and I ended up finishing last. So that was a
oh no.
bummer.
Has vintage racing been frustrating in terms of, I don't know, just developing your skill and hanging with the pack? And I mean, it's not easy.
No, I find it a pure joy. It's my favorite thing. I really love it, and I wish I could do it all the time, but I only get to do it a couple times a year. But I just love it. It's my favorite activity, and I love being at Lime Rock. It's one of my favorite places to be. It's a beautiful place. People are great there, and we have a sponsorship partnership with them, and that's partly just out of a genuine love affair with the place. And yeah, I enjoy it. I actually, for the first number of years, I didn't care at all about being competitive whatsoever. I just wanted to be there, just wanted to participate. I didn't care if I was faster than anyone or if I finished well. I just to be doing it was the privilege, right? And after only in the last few years have I started to kind of be like, okay, I've been doing this long enough. I want to try to like, beat people maybe a little bit or
Yeah.
be quicker than other people. So I've gotten a little more serious since then. But, the other thing is, if you want to do it on a budget, you can't, if you want to win races or like be the fastest, you've got to be prepared to spend a lot of money. And I just always tried to keep it at a low level budget wise, to just go there, have fun, and not blow up engines and destroy parts of the car or have accidents, etc. These are all bad things that cost a fortune and you could get hurt. So I've always tried to like keep it a little in my pocket. But I did buy this GTV6 race car a year and a half ago, and last year I was able to be at the sharp end of the grid with that car and have some nice dices. And I did 2 podium finishes last year, so that was a nice feeling.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
That's
Yeah,
an
first time
accomplishment.
after 10 years of racing, I finally had a podium finish. So didn't hurt that the really fast guy went home. So I inherited that one position from that alone. But
Has vintage racing given you a different insight on kind of racing drivers that you idolized over the years?
well, it certainly makes you respect them even more. Um, when you're driving vintage cars that these people would have driven new, like I can say with the Abarth, like to have driven that car in the Targa Florio in 1963 with the tires that they had and the road surfaces that they had. I mean, that took enormous balls. Like really to race those cars in the conditions that they had at that time, incredible.
Yeah.
I have enormous respect and admiration for those guys. And uh, you know what? I've done 2 watches with retired drivers when we did Vic Elford when he was alive and Brian Redman. And to get to meet both of those gentlemen and to hear their stories and interview them in conjunction with these watches, I mean, what those guys did, it's like going to war. I mean, they really had bravery. They could have died at any of these races. They never knew what was going to happen. Their friends were getting killed, and they just did it and
Yeah.
mastered it. It's just incredible.
There's a series of photographs of Vic Elford. I can't remember where it was. It might have been at Le Mans. It might have been at Sebring, but it's clearly hot in the photo, like the weather's hot, and he's got his fire suit unzipped and kind of down around his.
Oh, he's shirtless.
He's
Yeah,
shirtless, and
yeah.
he's got this 1,000-yard stare on his face. I think he's
That's a
holding.
great photo. I know the exact photo you're talking about. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's totally badass there. That was like peak Vic right there.
peak Vic. It's like Clint Eastwood, and I'm not going to go there. I was gonna say Clint Eastwood and Steve McQueen and all these people wrapped up together, but that's wrong. It's just Vic.
Yeah, no, he was an extraordinary driver.
Yeah.
I think there's several people that don't get enough credit, and he's one of them. I think that Pedro Rodriguez was another that should be considered one of the all-time greats. Like, because when I interviewed Vic and Brian Redman, that was one of the people that they really respected. Pedro apparently was like quite the guy, quite the driver and the man in the paddock at that time. But unfortunately, he was killed. So he's not around to tell us his stories. But he was really a gifted driver, and especially in the wet. I also feel like who doesn't get enough credit. Actually, I think Mario Andretti, for whatever reason, obviously he's a household name. Everybody knows him. Everybody admires him. But I don't think he ever gets really the kind of recognition he deserves as one of the true pinnacle pantheon all-time greats. But he really should be. Like when people talk about Clark or Senna or those type of people or Fangio. But it's like Andretti won in every type of car. He was at the highest level in every type of car he ever drove. And I don't know, I just think he's one of the most versatile drivers that ever sat in a car.
I agree. Another guy that I think doesn't get as much credit as he might deserve or much attention is Maston Gregory.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He was a really natural driver as well.
And he was an American competing in Europe and won Le Mans, might have won Sebring.
Yeah.
But also just kind of, I don't know, kind of under the radar.
He is under the radar. Yeah. I always thought it'd be cool to do a biopic of him starring Jason Schwartzman.
That would be, yeah, I could see the likeness.
Right.
I could see the resemblance. Yeah.
It would be great. It'll be great. Now he's an interesting, the famous story where he like bailed out of the C-Type, was about to roll over, and he just like jumps out of the car.
Yeah.
Survives.
Well, I mean, they were all prepared to do that in that era.
Yeah.
It was wild.
Yeah.
You and I are of the same mind in terms of the era of cars and racing. I mean, the 50s, 60s, 70s, I just love that time period and the people involved. And one of the most interesting aspects is how post-war racing car design just made these technological leaps. But at the same time, different systems weren't quite catching up to the speed. In other words, cars were getting really fast, but braking technology and aero wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
So there's this really critical, dangerous period in the mid to late 60s.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The
circuit safety was also just like completely lacking. I spent probably too much time researching some of these fatal accidents and like what happened. And it's like most of the time it really comes down to the fact that the circuit was so unsafe and the staff was unprepared and the medical staff was incompetent.
Yeah.
And a lot of those drivers would have survived if they had modern barriers and fire systems and so on that we have today. Regardless of, because you have to think, well, people are still racing these cars. So why is it safe now when it wasn't then? And it's not just, obviously the fuel tanks are one thing, but it's really not the car itself. that was that bad. It was everything around it.
Yeah, just
No.
as an example, in 1958 or 59, if you had an off, chances are you were going into a tree,
Yep.
you were going to get wadded up into a fence or an earthen berm,
Or
whereas
people.
or people or all of those things for that matter. Whereas today you've got this runoff with deep gravel and,
Yep.
you know,
And a trained crew that's right there to like go and get you and save you, which is
yeah.
really amazing. I mean, we really are blessed today to have these kind of fail safes.
In reading about the drivers of that era and talking to people like, for example, Justin Gurney, who is a friend of mine, and
Oh yeah,
his dad, of course, is a legend, but
yeah,
most of those guys just put it out of their head. They didn't think about it. If they
yep,
started to think about it too much, they would have quit.
totally. And
And
I don't even know how they had the strength to continue sometimes when people they loved or knew were getting killed, and especially if it was like a teammate, you're driving the same car. You know, it's crazy.
Jim Busby said as much too. He just focused on the job and put all of that other stuff out of his head.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know Jim Busby. He's a West Coast guy.
No, I don't.
Uh, Porsche 935s,
Oh wow.
Porsche 962.
Oh, sweet. What those guys were doing at a professional level, even if you're driving the same car, it's just you can't compare it. Even the guys at Goodwood who are really like excellent, uh, the risk factor, like I mean, it's just like the level of stuff that could go wrong back then compared to now. It's just like you wouldn't be taking those kind of risks that they're taking now. You would be conserving your tires a lot more than the guys at Goodwood do, for example. Stuff like that. You wouldn't be hanging it out every corner, like because that set of tires might have to last you 2 events, 3 events, stuff like that. So there were so many more calculations that these guys had to do to for self-preservation. So I just look at it as like this is like a historic recreation and cosplay for me to dream about what it would have been like for those guys. But I want to be very clear that much as I love racing, and I don't consider what I do to be like quote real racing the way that those guys were racing.
Yeah, you're just trying to capture, maybe a tenth of what it was like.
Yeah, you're getting a feeling. It's like and it's exciting and it's wonderful. It's an immersive experience.
Bradley, what's on the drawing board at Autodromo?
Oh, let's see. Well, we have a lot of cool stuff coming this year. So I'm going to tell a few things that have not been announced yet. First of all, we're going to have a new Anna digital watch coming in the spring, which is going to be the next in the Group C series. So it's going to be called the Group C Turbo Sport, and it's a totally new watch. It's totally from the ground up new. This is going to be kind of like a late 80s, early 90s style watch. Then after that, there's going to be another kind of classic style watch, more in the vein of the Stradale or the Inter Europa. That's kind of more of a dress watch. That's going to be called the Barchetta, and that's going to be coming out in the summer, late summer probably. I'm still working on the production side of that one. And then the final thing I'm working on is a new Series 3 Group B, which will be a new twist to kind of bring back the Group B series, but with a fresh twist that's like not something we've done yet. So that's also coming. So there's a lot of cool stuff in the pipeline. As I said before, the site is a little bit bare right now, but do keep your eye on the brand because there's a lot of cool stuff coming and a couple of surprises also.
That's exciting. I really love what you do. In the course of all this, building the brand and getting into your own personal cars and everything, what have been some of your most memorable experiences?
Hmm. That's a great question, actually. Nobody's ever asked me that before. Honestly, I never thought I would be able to go on like sort of driving tours For example, like I was a sponsor at the Copper State 1000, and I did that event a number of times with my wife and also with a friend, and that was just so much fun. It's such a great experience. If anyone out there has an eligible car and stuff, you should apply because it's just such an awesome group of people, really fun event, great roads. That is one big highlight, is doing that event a number of times.
What were you driving?
The Giulietta Spider, I did it twice. I think doing it in an open car is the way to go, honestly, in Arizona, because the sky and the expansive landscape, it really is like being on a motorcycle. It's really cool. I also did it I had a Montreal at one point, which is no longer with me, but that was a neat car and did it with that. That was actually my top, probably Nirvana driving experience, was driving that car, the Alpha Montreal, on this. There's a very windy uh, cliffside road that leads into Jerome, Arizona.
Right.
And it's like a video game road. It's like amazing. And I had a completely clean run. There was not a single civilian car that got in my way. And completely clean run, just perfect time of day. The sun was at this perfect angle. The colors were perfect. The car was perfect. And the car has a very long second gear. So you could just throw it down into second and have this beautiful overrun, like downshift into a corner. And then you just roar out of the corner because the Montreal had good torque. And so it was just, that car on that road was just the perfect driving experience. I really can't say anything more than that. It was perfect.
Yeah, and it's a V8, which
Yeah,
is
it's a V8 echoing off the cliff face.
yeah.
And oh man, I had brand new tires at the time. It was perfect handling wise. Those cars can really handle it. People say that they wallow, but that's if you have like worn out bushings and stuff. But if you have the car dialed in, they actually handle really great. You just have to get used to it.
And that car is also bristling with design details. And earlier I was saying that, paring it all down is really important. I think you agree with that. But
Mhm.
the Montreal is sort of an exception in a way. Like there's more stuff there than there needs to be, but it works.
Oh, way more stuff. It's very overwrought almost, but so cool. I mean, there's like this pointless holes on the side of the car, which
Right.
just look amazing, but do nothing except to allow water entry. You have the gauge binnacles, which are some of the coolest gauges ever designed. It's just like a spaceship in there. And then you have also a fake Nakaduct on the front hood, which, it really is an Italian pony car is what it is.
Yeah.
It's a pony car. It's a basic sedan chassis. It's a 105 chassis with a big V8 stuffed in the front, and then a cool 2+2 body. It's exactly like a Mustang or a Camaro.
And it's got the totally unnecessary headlamp treatment with the
Oh yeah, with the vents, and then they flip down like this,
yeah.
and then they go one at a time. It's an air system, so it goes like. That's how it opens.
Yeah. Really, really neat car.
Yeah, it is a very neat car. And I enjoyed owning it, but it was like one of those, it's like owning a boat, pleasure to buy, pleasure to sell. Uh, yeah, that was great. And then a couple other cool experiences I could tell you. So a number of years back, I did the official watches for the Ford GT supercar. And I got to go to Dearborn and see the skunk works where they were designing the car, this sort of secret studio uh, behind this unmarked door, and to see the interior buck and all this stuff. And then they were still in pre-production at that time. So I got to go see under the car on a lift, and they were like, yeah, nobody's seen under this car at this point, like outside of Ford. This was in like, I guess 2016. And they had these weird fiberglass body bucks that were like this greenish color. They were like these weird pre-production, very strange, raw-looking cars. And I was like, these are so cool. It's like, what is going to happen to these? Are you going to sell them? They're like, no, they're going to be destroyed. When it's done. Whenever you get to see stuff that you're like, this is history,
Mm.
Like I'm in history right now. It's like if you were seeing like, again, early prototypes of the GT40 back in the 60s before it had done anything. It was so cool.
But
That was a very special experience.
how did that deal come together, by the way, to do the watch? Did Ford come to you?
Yeah, what happened was Chris Svensson, who was the design director of Ford North America at the time, and he was the person overseeing the car. He was a collector of Autodromo watches. I actually have a lot of car designers as customers, as it may not surprise you, but I didn't know that he was one of those people. I was like, so he actually contacted me through Facebook on my personal Facebook to try to get in touch, and I missed the message for like it was in like what this folder where stuff goes. And then I looked at it and I was like, "Oh my god, like I missed this? Like this is holy like so anyway, I wrote him. I was like, oh, "I'm so sorry I didn't respond. I didn't see this message." So anyway, he was really nice and he basically said, we're trying to do a watch for this GT. We want to do something really cool and I really like your stuff and love for you to do a proposal for us. So he didn't give me the project, but he was the one who was basically saying like, please give us a proposal and then I could sell it up the food chain for you.
Mm.
And so he did that. And he changed my life, and it was a really tremendous honor to have someone of that stature take an interest in the company and fight for. He actually really fought for the design internally to get made, and it was great.
And was the idea that every buyer of a Ford GT would get a watch along with the car?
So the idea that was the essential idea, yes. But the way that Ford structures their licensing agreements, it was more like every Ford GT customer has the opportunity to buy this watch, which is exclusive,
Mm.
but they don't get it with the car. It was not a seamless process, let's say, from start to finish for the customer or for us. So that was a bit of a challenge in terms of actually selling the watches. We did pretty well in the end, but had Ford been a bit more collaborative in terms of like integrating it into the order process of the car, we could have done a lot more, I think, with that
Yeah.
project. It would have been great.
Still incredibly cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. I got, it was just a very cool experience overall to get to like have a view inside the company, and making such a special thing. And that car, like, I don't know if things like that will ever happen again. It was actually another analogy, better analogy than the GT40. It was like when they made the original Stingray
Mm.
Corvette. The Stingray Corvette was developed completely in secret in an unmarked room. Bill Mitchell didn't let anybody but the core team know about it. He kept it totally private from his boss. And then they just made this car in secret. And Peter Brock wrote a great book about this if you want to read it. But it was like that. It was like, I can't believe in 2016 that something this cool could happen in Detroit, in a big motor company to develop this secret car, the small team. Very cool.
Yeah, that's the stuff we live for, right?
Totally.
You said that you've got a lot of car designers as customers. I'm curious what customers say to you personally about the watches.
Well, I think that a common thing I get is that they feel like someone made something for them. That this is like kind of a thing they always kind of wished it existed, and now it actually does. So they have something that expresses their passion, and it's also not hyper expensive or anything. So I think that the people, I think they just love that there's a genuine passion that runs through the work, and it resonates with them.
Yeah. Well, that says a lot.
Yeah, I'm very proud to count all of my customers as loyal clients, hopefully.
Well, I'm excited to see what's next for you, and people can check it out at autodromo.com. Fantastic watches. Bradley Price, thanks for coming on the show. I had a lot of fun.
Me too, and thank you so much. It was really a pleasure to chat with you.
That's all for this episode of Horsepower Heritage. You can find more great stuff on the YouTube channel and on Instagram. And if you enjoy the podcast, leave me a 5-star rating and a review, and support the show by becoming a patron. Go to buymeacoffee.com/HP Heritage. And for just a few bucks each month, you'll help keep the wheels turning. Thanks to those of you who've already become patrons. I really appreciate it. And until next time, I'm Maurice Merrick. Thanks for listening.